Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here. Final Fantasy XIV is an MMO very much made in the modern day. It's designed from start to finish to keep you moving ahead, experiencing new stories, and teaming up with allies to tackle tougher and tougher bosses. But what if Final Fantasy XIV wasn't this way? I'll be doing my best to knock Final Fantasy XIV off the rails as much as possible and show you sides of the game you probably didn't know existed or were even possible. Welcome back to Final Fantasy XIV Solo Ironman. So here we are, back again and ready to trudge through some more content all by our lonesome. Hey, I have all of you here, so am I really doing this alone? I had a lot of fun recording the first part, and as of recording this, I've actually got almost enough footage for 4 videos, and still working on it when there's not other things happening at the same time. Before that though, I wanted to take the beginning of the video to do a recap of what the series is and what some of our goals are. Ironman is a game mode in RuneScape, basically meaning you can't trade with other players or use the game's main market to acquire items. Think of it kind of like solo self-found, if that phrasing helps better. This series is a take on that, but with a lot more restrictions to combat how accessible Final Fantasy XIV is. Normally, things like story and job quests really reward almost all the armor you need to finish the story, while currencies can easily be utilized to bypass any gaps in between. Not to mention, you have duty support in order to actually not need any actual players, but to still have all the assistance you need. For that reason, I'm not only not trading or using the market board, but I'm disallowing most quest rewards or easily accessible vendor gear. Generally, I'll be crafting most of the gear or acquiring it through other more obscure methods, especially early on. Many of you asked why I was doing such a restrictive playthrough, and the real answer is that I was inspired by my recent time in RuneScape. Both through my experiences in old school RuneScape and my time speaking with Wrath Games, I just came to kind of want to see if I can handle such a challenge. So here we are, ready to continue our adventure. In the last video, we mostly explored a few progression options before crafting up some gear to make it through the first 15 or so levels of the MSQ. The plan is mostly the same here, keep trekking through and see what challenges await. That being said, you may remember I left the last video off with a bit of an ominous message. It's here it comes, here it comes, say it. Palace of the Dead, now accessible. I had alluded that Palace of the Dead was going to be an incredibly grueling experience, but I didn't elaborate why. Palace of the Dead is Final Fantasy XIV's first deep dungeon, originally released during the Heavensward expansion. It becomes accessible after finishing Tamtara in the main scenario and can be unlocked as early as level 17. It is a premier method of leveling alternative jobs and has some cool weapons and cosmetic rewards strewn throughout. Okay, so that doesn't sound so bad, right? So why the fuss? Well, Palace of the Dead will be super integral to my playthrough that I will literally have to spend, and I'm not kidding you, hundreds of hours grinding it out, testing the true limits of not only my game, but my mental capacity. Let me explain. First off, anytime I need to swap jobs for any particular reason, Palace of the Dead will be a go-to leveling option. Eventually, this means leveling Warrior, Samurai, and probably others to tackle the various challenges ahead, or even the challenges right in front of me. This is rough enough on its own, but I had one extra layer of difficulty I added to this challenge that I hadn't really made a big deal of before. I made this character on a non-preferred world. This means that all those grinds are effectively twice as long. So what may have been 80 hours of leveling is automatically now 160. I'm not going to start over, but we'll see what happens in the future parts. I'll overcome this challenge with a plan when the time comes. Second, Palace of the Dead is another obscure way of getting some useful items to help advance through the early story. Inside the dungeon exists the Accursed Hoard, hidden treasures uncovered with the Intuition Pomander. These contain a variety of loots, with what's inside changing depending on the floor sets they're acquired on. Floors 51 to 150 are of particular interest to me. Floors 51 to 100 offer a variety of replica Allagan gear and crafted primal weapons. These pieces in isolation, they might help me early on if I level up to 50, but more importantly, they can be desynthesized into rare materials to help craft even better armor. In fact, the only way to obtain some materials is either through these or Grand Company vendors, so at some point we will face the dilemma of deciding whether or not we want to make a concession for accessible materials and grind out Grand Company points, or simply take the fact they'll be locked here for near eternity anyway, so I'll probably get them done here. Floors 101 to 150 also reward some good items, but I believe they have a slightly higher item level. The problem is that these floors are a pain to grind hordes on, since I'll be using all of my intuitions ideally before even reaching them. Not to mention, these floors are considerably slower, as Palace of the Dead is relatively more difficult after floor 100. 51 to 100 is really quick, but after that, things slow down a lot. I'll consider my luck if I get these weapons prior to finishing A Realm Reborn, But honestly, I'm not really planning on doing much on those floors. At least I hope I don't have to. To get a feeling for things, I went through Palace 1 to 100 after unlocking it and discovered other potential concerns. For one, for whatever job is my highest level job, I can already see why picking a preferred world would have been, well, preferred. Second, Palace of the Dead recently underwent a major change, improving its accessibility for players by greatly speeding up the acquisition of ether pool stats and making sustaining potions, a potion that regenerates your health over time, way more available. This is super awesome for everyone, except possibly me. Prior to this update, Palace would drop a waterfall's worth of traditional potions, all the way up to max potions in Heavensward. This would have meant that I could have used Palace to infinitely fund my potion stash until potentially getting Stormblood. However, all of those drops were replaced with sustaining potions. Great for Palace, not great for me anywhere outside of this place. We'll see the full ramifications, but I suspect I'll be doing a lot of potion crafting with alchemy instead. I can still get them from bronze chests, but quite frankly, one potion at a time from bronze chests is not a way I want to live my life. Fortunately, high potions are so insanely strong for a while, and they are relatively low level, so I can ride those out for quite some time, and they're super easy to craft. Anyway, while I do a quick 1 to 100 solo, how about a fun Palace of the Dead fact? Palace of the Dead was introduced in patch 3.35, but only the first 50 floors. It wasn't until patch 3.45 where floors 51 all the way up to 200 were introduced. At that point, it was largely intended to be done by small groups of 2 to 4 players, but Yoshi P did say that you could attempt to solo the entire 200 floors, though he didn't know if it was possible. This is actually reflected in-game as A, nobody actually did solo up to Palace of the Dead 200 until after Stormblood released, and B, there was no Necromancer title and achievement for soloing floors 1 to 200. It just didn't exist because the confidence that it was even possible just really wasn't there. However, when Stormblood released, while everyone was looking at all the new content, or at least trying to get to it if they could possibly get past Cold Steel, there were some people that noticed a new achievement had been added, and that is when the Necromancer achievement was put into the game. In fact, Stormblood is when Red Mage was introduced, and I don't think it's a coincidence that they looked at Red Mage, saw Vercure, and went, you know what? Maybe now it can be soloed up to floor 200. It's hard to say. There was never an official comment about whether or not this achievement was added because they thought it was possible specifically with Red Mage, but Red Mage was really just the beginning. Palace of the Dead solos have come a long way since then, and all 4 of the deep dungeons as of the release of this video have a fairly active solo community that has branched out to things like high scoring and speedruns to trying to do it with classes, no self-healing, and all sorts of restrictions, whatever they can realistically think of. But it all began way back when, in Stormblood, when the Necromancer achievement was first added. Anyway, during my quick 1 to 100 solo, I opted to collect as many Accursed Hordes as I could. Like I said, floors 1 to 50 aren't too important, but those 51 to 100 hordes are super important. I'm not going to open them right away. There's no point, really. I just have so many more by the time I actually need them later. I just have to make sure to find every single one that I possibly can. Alright, here's one right here. What the? This isn't an Accursed Horde. At least, that's not what's usually in it. This is the new SteelSeries Arctis Nova 7X Gen 2 headset. Well, the Gen 1 headset has been one of gaming's best headset options for a long time, and it seems the Gen 2 one is just everything but better. It even has up to 50 hours of battery life. That means I might only need 4 full charges to get Palace done. Or maybe more. Fortunately, you can get yours without the Accursed Horde. Just use the link in the description and enjoy a 12% discount code with code MrHappy. Ad blockers can make that link not work since it's technically a tracking link. You know, it's an affiliate. If you buy through that, it supports the channel and all that. But, you know, just try an incognito tab or whitelisting it or whatever. Anyway, I don't plan on desynthesizing these, so I should probably keep looking for more hordes. After getting that horde, I finished my 100 run and went on to be just barely 31 Paladin, got all the way up to almost 35. I mean, that's a decent jump, but for 4 to 5 hours of work, it's abysmal in the scope of how much more I'll need to do in the future. Seriously, I can't stress how not good this is, but I'll explain more when the time is right. For now, let's consider the experiment a success and just get back to our normal progression. Actually, before I even did Palace, I actually did something that I kind of forgot to mention, that I did just quickly knock out Ifrit hard mode. I expected this to be quick and easy, and it was. There isn't really much to say about Final Fantasy's favorite fire fauna. Just high potion whenever, really. I actually expected to breeze through Halatali and Thousand Maws because, I mean, the last few dungeons were super easy, so why wouldn't these? I'll just gain a few more levels. I got to level 35, made weapons, armor, even accessories, all high quality, all ready to go. Figured I wouldn't need that many high potions, so I grabbed Halatali from the quest and just went in. For the trash, I actually decided to do a lot of sneaking. While many dungeons were reworked and more modern dungeons you have to kill monsters in the way, Halatali's trash is still pretty much the same, so you can walk behind sight aggro monsters like the bombs and sneak aggro by things like the Dullahans. It's honestly kind of great, and there are times they do miss shenanigans like these in current dungeons. The struggle actually came with the bosses, which were massive HP sponges compared to the first 3. I actually died a few times just trying to preserve my high potions because I didn't really bring a whole lot with me. I tried using some of my other potions that I picked up from Palace of the Dead, but I discovered that the cooldown timers were way too long for these to be effective at this level. I would need some sort of self-sustain built into my job, which I won't have that good of for quite some time before those will be effective. Now, the first boss was nothing too special. 2 autos, special attack, and repeat over and over again. One of them is a tank buster, and the fire spells were not avoidable like I showed in the previous video. That doesn't bode well. On the way to the second boss, I had to pull the chain winches. You have to pull all of them or the door to the second boss won't open. There are 3 different things that can happen here. You get a treasure chest, a bomb appears and blows up, or 3 lightning elementals attack you. 3 elementals were a concern, but fortunately, I could do the walkthrough trick on those. Really just the bosses they decided to fix back in A Realm Reborn. So I just snuck around and pulled as many winches as I could without aggroing and on to the second boss. This one, I just kind of did in the silliest way possible. I tried to minimize the number of auto attacks I took by throwing a lot of shield lops. The boss starts in the middle of the water, then will chase you for a bit, do a couple of attacks, and then go back to the water, charge up a big attack, and repeat that over and over and over again. So you can kind of kite the boss and almost only take tank busters and maybe a couple of autos at the exchange of the fact that you are shield lobbing over and over and over again. It took a long while doing it this way, but it didn't go too bad, and I got to keep a lot more of my high potions. Then I got to the final boss, which was actually my initial biggest concern and ended up being a bit odd. It was harder than it needed to be, but not for the reason I expected. Twice throughout this fight, the boss will go to the middle of the room, shield itself, and summon several fire wisps that slowly float to it. When they reach, they explode for damage on the party. Now, the small ones just do a bit, but the big ones do significant AoE damage. Seeing how many were going to make it through, I began to worry that I was going to need to do a second pull, because I was falling way behind on HP even on just the first one. What I didn't expect was for this to only happen twice in the first place. That part surprised me. I thought this mechanic was tied to health percentage, even in the reworked Halatali, so I thought it would at least happen 3 times. When I saw it happening really fast before I had really done much damage to the boss, I thought it was going to happen non-stop until after the second time. But it turns out it's just part of the boss's attack rotation until it does it twice, and then never does it again. Then it just became dealing with the health sponge of a boss, and bam, Halatali was complete. Harder than I thought it would be, but, you know, we made it. This did concern me, though. If Halatali was harder than I thought, what else would be harder than I thought? I then continued the MSQ until Toto-Rak, though I made sure to make a few more high potions along the way. Learned that lesson real quick. Toto-Rak was actually simpler than Halatali. The most threatening things ended up being the first and second boss, which is basically the same mob twice in a row. Its spam applies a poison and auto attacks pretty hard, so it just did a lot of damage, meaning I had to kite it from time to wait for my potion timer. The second boss also summoned 2 additional adds, which also apply another poison plus also auto attack. But once they were dealt with, it was the same old, same old. Funny enough, the final boss was super easy. Even with more adds and attacks, it just did pitiful damage, marking an easy victory and good progression point for the end of this video. Right now, I'm feeling pretty good. Our dungeon progression is going smoothly, and we have plans in place to handle stuff once we get to 50+. It'll take some grinding, but I'm feeling pleased. That being said, we have one of our first actual roadblocks coming up soon, or should I say, road rocks. Yeah, I don't think that joke worked. We're going to save that for another video. But that's going to be a wrap for my second video in my solo Iron Man series. If you're enjoying the video, be sure to interact with it in some way. Like it, comment below, ask questions, comment, whatever it is you got to say. But thanks for watching. I appreciate all of you. And until the next one, take care.